some people prefer to watch on on our YouTube channel, on the
Ah,
YouTube
right.
Live.
Okay. Okay.
So, but the disadvantage of being on YouTube Live is that you don't get to ask any questions.
All right.
Only if you're here do you get to ask questions. So, just before we introduce you, I just want to make sure that's coming at you live. Yes, good, and we're live. Oh, sorry, you're getting an echo. Okay, there we are. We're live. So, firstly, I want to say good evening to everyone that's logged in already. Um, we have
Hello,
Helen.
Beth.
We have Helen as our guest schmoozer tonight. As if you were ever going to be invited to be a guest schmoozer. Like, I think we can just remove the word guest from that bio. So the reason why I wanted to have Helen come on is because a few weeks ago, I had a random Friday conversation with Helen, and she has been very much front and center in my mind and some of the conversations, because I found it to be very different listening to you speak to how I hear things on the radio. Not that the message was different, but it was just, I don't know if it was more real, but it was I suppose it was different because along with what's going on in your world, it was really interesting to hear you say, I just can't log in on Friday nights for shul. I'm buggered. Um, and so I thought, well, let's hear about what's actually going on. And I have a whole lot of questions, and I thought there might be a few interesting things that we'll bounce off and talk about. So for those that don't know, Helen is a nurse and has been a nurse for over 20 years.
40.
Over, so yeah. As if I would have said that, would have been donked over the head. Like, how old do you think I am?
No, 40 years.
And and you're also a team leader.
Correct.
And this whole conversation began because I called Helen and I said, with all the coronavirus stuff, I imagine in the early part of the conversation, I said that I thought that she would have, because of mental health, that they would be more cautious how they were rostering nurses and health professionals to make sure that they were well looked after so that the hospitals could be well staffed. And she said, are you crazy? Not only are we not being rostered, but you were at the time 11 staff down in the hospital or something?
No,
Whatever.
no, no, not us. Not us, not in our hospital. Our hospital, thank God, our hospital is clean. At the moment, I think we are one of the very few hospitals that is still clean without a COVID patient. We have been very lucky, but we are also very, very, very vigilant.
So,
So, mm,
and the other thing before we get into that is,
mm.
I don't know if you still are, but you were then sent over to Jewish Care to the breakout that was there.
So what happened is elective surgery ceased by
Yeah.
the government. They ceased us about 3 weeks ago. And that is it's pretty devastating, not only from an economic point of view, obviously, but from people who need operations and can't have them.
So
So
so we're gonna really need to go into that, hear it from your vantage point, and your vantage point is going to give us a window. But before we do, can I go 40 years back?
sure,
You became a nurse in South Africa,
correct.
40
In
years ago.
1973 to be 1974, I qualified.
So that was apartheid era.
Yes.
When you and from what I understand, there were two different schools of nursing. There was for white people, and there were colored hospitals,
There
and
was colored, black, and white. Yeah.
and they didn't really mix.
No, we were not allowed to go into the black hospitals. The black hospitals were not allowed to come into the white hospitals. The doctors, however, could go into black. The white doctors could go into black, but the black doctors couldn't go into white. So it was, it was shocking. But the fact of the matter is there were way more white doctors than black doctors. So, there was a huge number. It was a huge numbers game. So they had to accept the white doctors into the black hospital.
Because they just
Bearing
needed
in mind,
doctors.
the biggest hospital in the Southern Hemisphere is Baragwanath Hospital. They could house like 2,000 patients. So it was massive. And You know, it was a massive trauma center. So anybody who worked there, all the doctors who worked there actually, who now work everywhere overseas, have had an enormous amount of experience because, you know, you'd get patients sitting in. I actually did go to the black hospitals because I was with a team of doctors and nurses that we ran clinics in Riverlea, which was a colored area, and in the black area. So we were kind of given a bit of dispensation to go there for some reason.
Right.
And I can tell you that in the black hospital, the experience you gain there is something you will never see anywhere in the world. You'd get patients sitting in the emergency room with daggers, hammers, bicycle spokes in their spine, just sitting, waiting in the emergency room, waiting for treatment. You've just never seen that anywhere else in the world. It's an incredible experience. So
I have a friend who's an emergency department surgeon in Joburg, and he said what he experienced training, the best surgeons in America have never seen.
Absolutely.
Exactly what you just said.
Yeah. And a lot of the nurses, South African nurses, who did have the good fortune, I suppose, to be able to go into those areas, we experienced crazy stuff, like weird stuff. So, you know, in terms of COVID, and I can tell you this for everybody out there, and I'd love the message to get across, you know, this virus is something that it's unprecedented. I mean, the Spanish flu, I can't talk about, I wasn't there. But I can talk about HIV/AIDS, which I was there for. So HIV/AIDS in the 70s and 80s was pretty scary.
So this is still in South Africa?
In South Africa. I was only young. I was a young pup, just newly qualified. And we had HIV/AIDS. We had the first HIV/AIDS patient, and we did a transplant on this patient. I can't remember if it was kidney or liver. I can't quite remember. The patient died eventually of AIDS, actually, not of the transplanted organ. But the thing is that people were really, really nervous of HIV/AIDS. Like, we used to put PPE on, the same as what we do today. It was different then, the quality, etc. But we put it on. We were nervous. We were scared. We didn't know if we would get it. You know, it's not an airborne disease. So, of course, it wasn't as readily transmitted as this is today.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that this today is although I'm not undermining HIV/AIDS at all, but this is way more scary, way more dangerous. And, you know, people who are not taking this seriously have no idea actually what's going on. It's not just a little snippet you hear on the news and the odd person saying, oh, you know, so-and-so's got corona, but they'll be all right. It's really a very serious disease. A condition to have, really very serious, because it's around the corner. It's anywhere. You can sniff it, you can catch it in your eye, you can just breathe a droplet that size.
Yeah,
you'll get it. I mean, we wear PPE at work, and I can tell you it is horrible.
Describe that, because it was so much crazier after you told me. I didn't even like, you were describing surgery. And not being able to hear. Just describe what wearing PPE feels like, the impact it has on your body.
Okay, so first of all, let me tell you that our hospital, we don't have any COVID patients. And the reason we don't have any COVID patients is we are super, super, super vigilant. Yeah. We do not leave a stone unturned. Yeah. It is a great organization that I work for, and we are absolutely vigilant. We don't have COVID patients. We had 2 doctors who were COVID positive, a surgeon and a doctor in the hospital. They isolated, they're fine, they were back at work, they were fine. They were just unfortunate and got it from who knows where. It wasn't from the hospital. So what we do is any airborne operation, anything that can be airborne, where you're intubating a patient, you're putting a tube down their mouth, you're putting a tube in their nose, you're putting anything that can emit aerosol out of their mouth. So anything with droplets or coughing, or which they often do because you're putting tubes and things down their mouth, can set off the virus if they had it. So we have to protect themselves, and we have to protect us as the staff. So what we have to do with all the time with operations, but specifically with more airborne, like with dental operations, with ear, nose, and throat operations, where you've got a lot of stuff coming out. Stuff, not stuff that you can see, mind you. It's a cough, it's a sneeze from a patient, it's just a deep breath. All those things would transmit COVID if the patient had it. First of all, let me tell you that every single patient is tested before they come into our hospital, and that if there's any chance of anything, they're not allowed in.
Right.
So we go into the theatre and we wear the N95 masks, which are, if anybody's worn the proper ones, they are, you can't breathe. You cannot breathe. It's like this. It's like you come and you're breathing yourself. You're breathing your own air. It is really very difficult. The first time I put it on, I tell you, I thought I was having a heart attack. I was like, you just can't breathe. You get used to it after a while, but you cannot breathe properly because you're sucking in your own breath really all the time. On top of that, we wear other, like a masky thing similar with a visor, a big visor covering your eyes. Even if you wear glasses, you wear another visor. If you choose not to do that, that's a choice. You wear thick protective goggles over your own glasses as well. You wear a gown, a waterproof gown, which are special issue gowns. You wear double gloves on your hands. And we don't wear shoe coverings, but in intensive care and all the places where they've got COVID patients, they wear shoe coverings as well. As well as in ICU in those places, they wear balaclava. So they cover, they don't have anything showing here. We still are covered up to here, but they have, they are completely covered here. And I can tell you that those people who go for 10 hours wearing those masks, they have injured themselves. They are bruised, they are lined, they are exhausted, they are dehydrated. For 4 hours, I've done it, 4 to 5 hours at a time. It is exhausting. You sweat, you are hot, you're irritable, and you actually can't focus properly. You can't really think properly because you're so ensconced in this abnormal breathing apparatus. It's really mind-blowing. And bear in mind, we are not treating COVID patients, but we are preventing it from happening.
Right.
So, you know, you can only have the utmost admiration for everybody who is dealing with COVID. So what happened with us was elective surgery was ceased about 3 to 4. Did you want to hear this, Malcolm?
Yeah.
So elective surgery was ceased by the government about 3 or 4 something weeks ago to free up the staff in all the private hospitals to go and help in COVID hospitals. It wasn't because they didn't want to operate. It had nothing to do with that. It was basically to free up the staff. So in my hospital, which is it's a private chain of hospitals, the government took us all over and started paying us. So we're not paid anymore by the private hospital sector. And all the hospitals that need help, and mainly the aged care, which is horrendous what's going on. It is absolutely something. You see it on the news, you see the number, 17 died today, 25 died. You have no idea, these poor people, what's going on. So that's what happened. So a whole team of nurses went to Jewish Care because Jewish Care had 27 COVID patients. And they had no experience with PPE whatsoever. Our nurses went in.
The people who were sent over there?
No, the nurses who were working at Jewish Care.
Oh, the nurses who were working there, right.
The nurses and the staff at Jewish Care had no idea how to do PPE. They had no idea. I'm not sure why, but they just had no idea. Teams of our nurses went in and showed them and helped them and guided them and looked after the patients. And thankfully, I can tell you that our entire team has left Jewish Care today. They've left, and Jewish Care is now on the road to improving greatly because they know about PPE. They know how to do it. Their patients are getting better. When they're not called patients, they're called elders over there. And they're all gorgeous. And they are actually now starting to do better. Our teams have now moved into other critical areas of aged care. There's a few homes around, which I won't mention their names, which are in dire straits, way worse than Jewish care. Jewish care was not that patients that they were well looked after, but they just didn't have the skill to do it. But these places that our teams have gone to today and last week are in really dire straits. The clients they're dying. You've heard it on the news. They're just lying in their own excrement. They haven't been fed. They're dehydrated, and they're dying. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there that people just don't know about. And the frustrating thing is people say, I don't want to wear a mask. Why should I do this? Why should I self-isolate? Why can't I visit my friend? Honestly, live a day in the life of what's going on in the hospital system. You will wear a mask. You won't visit your friend. You won't, hang out to go for your coffee. It's dire out there. It is dire.
So tell me, when you were sent into Jewish care, while you were there, do you feel the anxiety, or do you just get into this is work and just get on with what needs to be done each day?
So the majority of the guys and girls that went had an enormous fear, because we have not worked with COVID patients. An enormous fear, and everybody was like not making mistakes, but they were not sure. They were just uncertain of how to deal with this. By the third day, everybody was right into it, and all their professionalism kicked in. They did what they had to do, and they didn't even think of the COVID patient, the clients.
Right, you were
just COVID.
You were in medical mode.
You're in medical mode. And I have to tell you that of course, most of the nurses, 99.99%, except myself and one other girl, are all not Jewish. And they absolutely loved the clientele at Jewish care. They developed such a rapport with some of those people that it was so heartwarming. They heard Holocaust stories that the girls, they were crying. They actually were crying. The nurses were crying. They said they've never heard anything like it. They could not believe what they were actually hearing, and they loved it. And all their fears went, and all they did was look after people and teach the staff there.
So you're all wrapped up in PPE, masks, and everything. How did the residents? I mean, that would have been quite a shock visually to them. They're older, maybe not as firm mentally. Like, how did they respond to this?
They became more confused, to be honest, because they didn't know what was going on. They had no idea, these Martians, because bearing in mind, they were wearing, all the guys and girls were wearing lots of headgear and stuff like that, because 27 positive COVID patients, man, that's hectic. Yeah. That is hectic. And they were confused. They didn't know what was going on. They were wondering more. But after a week or so, they kind of, and the nurses were so gentle with them and explained things to them, and they settled down. They kind of settled. Obviously, people with dementia, Alzheimer's, and that sort of thing didn't quite really get it, but there was a lot of more understanding between both parties. So it became a really positive experience. And like I tell you, the nurses who are not Jewish, they are just thrilled. They want to go back there. They actually want to go back there.
Why is it? They've been around, I'm sure, many inspirational people and stories. What was it that made them so inspired by this in particular?
Menachem, these people have not heard about the Holocaust. Half of them don't even know it exists. They have no idea. They ask and they go, what, the Holocaust? What was all that about? They don't know. Bearing in mind, we're talking about nurses, not only Australian nurses, they're from all over the world. Philippines, India, China. I mean, they don't know about the stuff. They don't know about the stuff. It's incredible. They do not know.
And was there a briefing before going in, like realizing?
Very minimal briefing.
Trauma.
Minimal, nothing about that. Nothing about that. It was just people who are sick with COVID. But also, they're very fortunate because the clients over there had COVID, but none of them were really, really, really sick, which was such a blessing.
Yeah.
It really was a blessing. because I can tell you at one of our other private hospitals, a sister hospital to mine,
Yeah.
the clients came from another facility, which you heard about on the news,
Yeah.
and they were so ill. They had deaths the first day that they came into our facility, and it was horrendous, absolutely horrendous. Whereas at Jewish Care, they were really well looked after. They just had COVID and needed to be helped. But at other facilities, it's bad. And we've had patients come from Frankston. Frankston have got 50 healthcare workers affected in the last couple of weeks.
At Frankston Hospital, you're talking about?
Frankston Hospital. So all their patients, their non-COVID patients, have been transferred to one of our other facilities I'm an hour away.
Like Mornington Peninsula area?
Yeah, down there, correct. The Peninsula Hospital, actually. So they've got lots of COVID patients over there. And our staff go there as well. So our staff have been staffing there as well. And it's a circus. It's a circus in a good way. They are well under control, but it's hectic.
Right.
It's absolutely hectic because they've got a COVID ward, they've got a pre-COVID ward, they've got emergency where you just never know who's coming in. Is it COVID? Isn't it COVID? They've got Frankston patients coming in. It's like a war zone. In our streets of Caulfield, we walk around and it's pretty tame. It's not like that in the hospitals. It's hectic. It's really scary.
Before we move on, does anyone have any questions for Helen just on what we've discussed so far? Anything that you want her to elaborate on? You can just unmute yourself. Okay. So I wanted to talk about stress. So we've been in this since late March. From a hospital perspective, it doesn't really end. The fact that there was a month of lighter restrictions probably didn't change the fact that it's around, and you might have a patient coming in, you might not, but it's around. So we're now talking about ongoing stress. How are you finding people are dealing with it? How do people manage the stress?
Not well at all. And not even our staff. We are so stressed at work, even though we're a non-COVID hospital, even though we don't have COVID patients. The stress is to maintain that, not to have COVID patients.
Yeah.
And also what's happened is we don't have elective surgery. So whilst some of us are not going to other facilities, because you can't have 100 people, in facilities all at one time. So they go, they get tested, they have days off. Once the test is negative, they come back to the hospital. So we have, staff coming and going from our facility.
Yeah.
And we have to maintain a a COVID-free environment. It's exceptionally stressful. So
are people snapping at each other? Are there?
That's it. You land up. You're fighting. Yeah, you're fighting with each other. You're picky. You ratty with each other. You're short with each other. There's no patience. It's really stressful. In the last 2 weeks, we've had 3 staff completely decompensate. Completely. One was a young girl in her 20s. One was a girl in her 50s. One in her one 60-year-old and one in the 50s. The 3 of them could not cope. They were crying, tantruming, just couldn't cope, and they were sent home on leave for a few weeks until they feel better. And that's what it's like. And I guess it's like that in all the hospitals. You try and keep a lid on it, but inside it's something that I can't explain. It's just, it's a war without bullets, and that's exactly what it is. It's a war without bullets, because we don't, at least where the bullet was coming from. You don't know where this is coming from. And the other thing is it's 24/7 COVID talk at work, 24/7. What were the numbers? Who died? How many died? Where did they get it from? Is your PPE fitting? Your PPE is not on properly. Where's this? Where's that? That's what it is. It's constant.
And if your PPE is not on properly, like, is it, that's it? There's another hissy fit, there's another agitation, or is there a
Well,
health
it's
order?
not a hissy fit, but you have to go. You've got to put it on properly. You've got to readjust your mask. So what a lot of our staff are doing at other facilities, they're called PPE spotters.
Yeah.
So they will watch the staff in other facilities putting on their PPE. And if there's a little bit of skin showing or the mask is not put on, they say, right, redo, redress, all of that. Sometimes you forget, like what happens is with the staff, they go, and after 5 or 6 hours, they have to take the PPE off to go and have a lunch break or go to the toilet or go and have a cup of tea. And it's a process. It's called donning and doffing. So you don your PPE on and you doff it off. And doffing is really critical. If you take your mask off the wrong way and you've been working with COVID patients, you'll get it. If you touch the outside of your mask and you touch your eye, you'll get it. It's this very specific. So we have PPE monitors who watch every single person donning, putting on their PPE, and doffing, taking it off the right. But it's a complete sequence of taking it off, actually. Where you put your thumbs, how you reach for the necktie. It's a complete system. And so you have to have monitoring of that. So it's nerve-wracking. Have I touched my eye? Have I taken it off the wrong way? It's really scary. It's nerve-wracking.
And
so that's.
I don't want to ask too much details, but if you suddenly have to go to the toilet, you've been drinking water, you're on your feet, do you have to doff, and is there a process, or?
It's a process, but quite frankly, you're screwed. It's really
if
tough.
you have to go to the toilet and it's not your toilet paper.
You're in trouble, man. You're in trouble. And what happens is a lot of people elect not to hydrate themselves during the day because it's just too hard to take it on and put it off.
Wow.
Put it off and take it off.
So people dehydrating.
Oh, you have no idea. Dehydrate. And I can tell you, again, the people in ICU units, they are completely dehydrated. Those nurses and doctors, I can tell you, because we've seen a few and we've had a few, they are heroes and angels. There's nothing short of it. Nothing short of it. They deserve every accolade known, honestly.
So I asked you, so I hope you don't mind me asking you again. No. I asked, is there an increase in smoking? What are people doing? What are they doing to de-stress at night when they go home? What is the outlet? I can't imagine everyone's sitting there meditating and practicing really good disciplines and habits.
No, they're not. I'll tell you what they're doing. They're walking. Yeah. If they go home before 8 o'clock, they'll go for a walk, but they're all drinking. Everybody's alcohol consumption has increased. Really? Big time. Yeah. Smoking, not so much, because there are not many of us that smoke. But alcohol, doctors as well. In fact, one of my surgeons today, and I won't mention his name because I love him to bits, he said, last night I decided to have an alcohol-free night for the first time in weeks. He said, I drank soda water. He said, I just had to give my liver a break. This is from a highly experienced surgeon.
Right.
So
they're just knocking back a few shots, glasses of wine.
I mean, they're not becoming alcoholics, but I mean, they certainly are increasing the alcohol level. But there's no question.
And in the wider hospital system, not necessarily yours, is there, do you hear that there's increased drug use, hospital drugs being used?
Yeah. Tranquilizers, that sort of thing.
Yeah, really?
Yeah. That sort of thing. And listen, let me tell you, a lot of mental health, I was going to say shit, I'll say it anyway. A lot of that stuff going on. A lot. Yeah, a lot.
And manifesting in what way that you're seeing?
They're just not coping. They have to take days. There's people who are taking sick days, a sick day here, a sick day there. We are not allowed to take leave at the moment. We're not allowed to take leave. But if you're having a crisis of any sort, if you're not coping, of course, I'll give you a day off here or there.
Are you seeing people, not en masse, but are you seeing relationship breakdowns?
Not so much from the COVID. I think it's more from people being bored at home. That's what I'm hearing.
It's not the highly stressed people going home.
No.
And just, it's all, okay.
Yeah, I think it's not that. I think it's just like it could be anybody, just having, living with your loved one and being bored or being irritated or not, that sort of thing. but not from the stress factor, not from, not from the COVID factor, unless, mind you, your husband and wife medical team, I think those people are stressed. We don't really have that, but I'm sure there is that sort of thing that goes on. I'm sure.
What are on the grapevine, so not necessarily people that you know firsthand, but what are some of the really inspiring stories that you've heard in context of the medical world that you're in the hospital world? What are some things that you like get the tingles down your spine and it makes you really go, wow?
Yeah, well, not like I say, not in ours because we don't have COVID, but most certainly, and we have colleagues out of our hospital, but we're really quite a tight family, the nurses and doctors. So we know doctors at Royal Melbourne, we know nurses at the Alfred, we know, and everybody's in touch with everybody. Even though Melbourne's quite a big city, there are quite a lot of stories that one hears from friends and from that. And I can tell you one of the most, it's hard, like people who are really sick and can't see their relatives, and the nurses have to give them the phone, talk to them on behalf of their relatives. That is just, it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking for these, and there are quite a lot of sick people in intensive care. It is heartbreaking because they can't see the reallys. So the nurses have to, they're everything to them. They hold their hands, all of that caring stuff. You can only be inspired by people who do something like that, and people die without their relatives around. You've hear it on the news, and it actually is happening.
Yeah.
So it's tough.
I've been involved in a couple funerals of people who they didn't have COVID, but they died in isolation in hospital, and because the family couldn't come into the hospital, and they were there for 2 or 3, 4 nights. One person was there for over a week, and that was it. And they were just alone. But I saw a few weeks back in Israel at I can't remember which of the major hospitals in Tel Aviv, and then there was also in Jerusalem where they had, particularly from the ultra Orthodox neighborhoods, people who had COVID and who were going in and visiting those people who were terminal at the end of life and weren't able to have any family visit, but they were going in and actually spending time with those people or small amounts of time so that they weren't alone. I don't know whether it's still going because now there are new discussions about reinfection and things like that, but I know that was going on, and I just thought that was really, it's quite a profound thing. Like one of the greatest things you can do is just be with someone right now who's completely alone.
It's actually, I've had a few friends who have had kids in hospital recently, adult kids, 20s and 30s. And who have one girl in particular who's really very ill, had to have an operation, like serious operation a few weeks ago. Her parents could not visit her. They could not visit her.
Yeah.
It was just heartbreaking. This kid was alone day in and day out, obviously with the medical staff, no family, nothing. It's heartbreaking. That's why this COVID, this virus is so real. It is out there. It's I can't tell you. It's just something to be feared. It really is.
So what gives you the meaning? Because you're not a big drinker.
No.
What's the meaning of it all, but what are you finding you're able to turn inwards in and go, well, this is my belief, or this is what I feel, and this is what's helping me.
I can tell you truthfully, Menachem, I can tell you.
Yeah.
I cry a lot. It's you at some point you get so, it's the thing you do, and you have that cry and you go, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. Yeah. And you feel better. No, seriously, there's nothing.
It's very cathartic, eh?
It is cathartic. It is. And I tell you, the other thing I've been doing is doing my meditation. I cannot sleep at night. None of us at work sleep. We do not sleep. And at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, I'm listening to your meditations. And I'll close my eyes and I do. And I listen, and often I'll fall asleep for a bit.
Yeah.
But then I wake up and then I'll put another one on, a different one. I'm telling you. That, yeah. But there's nothing, there's no amount of talking that you could try and make sense of it, because it just isn't, you can't make sense of it.
Yeah.
There is no sense of it. And I mean, as you well know, that my son lives in New York,
Yeah.
and that was a very heightened time for me when they were having
When it
1,000
was
and 1,200
running,
deaths
when
a
it was
day,
just raging through that.
raging through New York, and my son and my daughter and my grandchildren are there. I was not coping well at all. I was dealing with everything here and my kids over there. I was freaked out. Yeah, I can't tell you. I was on the tranquilizers, let me tell you.
Mm.
It was tough. It was tough. And you know yourself, I mean, you've had how many friends
Yeah.
in
Crown
Brooklyn and all
Heights.
that getting sick and so on.
Yeah.
But, you know, I have to say, people don't heed the warning. Even here, we have it here with some of our community, and I just want to shake them. They don't heed the warning.
Mm.
What do you do? All I can say is thank God New York, I don't know, it seems to be coming a little bit better now. The kids are socializing a little bit. And my grandchildren have not been to school for one day this year. Not one day have they been to school in New York.
Crazy.
So, I mean, yeah. So what do any of us do? Those that go home and drink. Those that take, you know, take drugs. But I tell you one thing, one of our surgeons, and we're not operating a lot now, we're only doing emergencies.
Yeah.
But one of our surgeons I was working with last week, a hand surgeon, he works in Dandenong Hospital as well. And he had a clinic there for, you know, emergency. And he had kids, a 14-year-old, 15-year-old, or a 13 and a 15-year-old, two boys.
Yeah.
And they had not only had they bust their hands because I don't know what they did, but they had self-harmed.
Mm.
They had self-harmed. And he said that was really scary, because that's what people are doing. They're self-harming because it's all too much. It's all too much.
Wow.
So, yeah. And he gave them a little chat and he said, please, you know, don't do that. Rather contact me, whatever. But, you know, that's scary to hear.
Mm. As a Jew, any inspirations or any things that frame it differently for you, or are the two completely separate in your mind?
You know what? It doesn't matter who you are. No, it's not. It's everybody. There's nothing that's different for between Jew, non-Jew, or no.
You can't,
Honestly.
and for you, there's no particular teaching or idea that just frames it for you any differently.
There really isn't, Menachem. There really isn't. I mean, it's just been such a horrible experience that I can't even. I can't make a point of difference for any, you know, I just can't. It's, you know, we've got our doctors that come in, our surgeons, they just shake their heads. They go shaking heads. Nobody knows. It's just, it's a feeling of desolation, really. And that's not being dramatic. It's just horrible.
Right. That's the feeling on the ground
That's the feeling on the ground. It's like, I tell you what, a 77-year-old friend of mine said to me the other day. I never realized this is the way I was going to end the last years of my life. And that put that into some perspective for me. I went, wow, she's 77. Who knows? This could last another 2-3 years, you know, in lockdown, out of lockdown, lockdown, out of lockdown. And maybe by then she won't be around anymore. So that was really riveting to me. I have to tell you, that shocked me a little bit. But it's interesting. How do you all see it? What is your idea of this whole COVID thing?
So I'll actually, if anyone wants to unmute themselves and either counter ask Helen, or Helen can run a podcast talking to people who aren't in the medical world. What are you seeing in your world? What's COVID look like?
Yeah, it's interesting for me to see it. Yeah.
I can tell you from my perspective, it's very, very interesting because my perspective is more not more, is 75% economic. The impact that it's had economically on people's lives.
Mm.
I would say in the daily phone calls and the daily, like, and it is like it's pretty full on, the conversations, but for 75% it is the economic impact, either how it's already impacted them or how it's slowly impacting them, etc., and the stress and the anxiety and the anger that goes along with that, which is quite a different set of frustrations to what you've spoken about. Those two frustrations are actually almost at odds with each other. And I've deliberately shy. We haven't spoken politics about what do you think, because I don't see the point in one individual, another individual talking about what we think of the government. Like everyone here has an opinion. It's more an insight. So it's interesting that, and the other 25% is just non-economic. It's grief related. It's relationship and the other issues that are impacted. I haven't really had to be confronted by COVID and people that I've spoken to, except those who have had family members or they themselves have been in hospital, and therefore the wider COVID impact again on visitation and things like that. So it's, and as a result, there's a frustration and a tension, but it's let out at the government. It's let out at, this philosophical question of money, of the economy versus the deaths, and then the comparative statistics of only so many people have died from COVID, but how many suicides have there been, and how many depression is there, and this and that. And it's a very different conversation that's being had, at least in my world, and I'm sure every single person here has their own world. I'm not in the business world, so I'm sure there are people who are in business and work who they again will have a different. I know people who have children or grandchildren who are interstate or overseas. I've never seen loneliness where married people who are living in the same house together, happily, well, lovingly, and who experience extreme loneliness, like they're living by themselves because they don't get to see family, they don't get to see their grandchildren, don't get to see their children, or they're, or like you, like your son's overseas, and like there's just, when will I ever see them? Is it
Yeah.
2 years away? Is it 5 years away? And they're sick of Zoom, and there's this sense of isolation. So those are, but that's a very different reality to what you've spoken about.
Make no mistake, we talk about those things at work as well. We talk about it, bearing in mind we are so 1.5 to 2 meters distanced in our tea room and our lunchroom. So it's also quite difficult. And we, just to put things in perspective as well, before I talk about the political side of it, we wear masks in the tea room. We prepare our cup of tea, our lunch, wearing masks. The only time we take it off is we sit down, we eat, masks go back on. That's it. And then we're out of there. There's no schmoozing and socializing. You sit, you eat, you're gone.
Do you doff? Was that the word that you used? Do you doff before you eat?
You doff before, yeah, but of course, you take your stuff off in theater. Okay. You never take your stuff off in the tea room, but you take your heavy mask off in the tea room, in the theater, and you put on a normal mask, just a lighter mask, and you go down to the tea room. We're always wearing masks. I can't tell you.
Janine unmuted herself before. I think you want to ask something or comment, Janine? Right, you have to re-unmute yourself.
I think I might have forgotten, but you were just asking about how people are in different worlds.
Yes.
How they are. So I think that a lot of people that I'm surrounded with or know do not believe that they will ever get COVID. They don't believe that they kind of like, I think, almost in a bit of denial. They continue to socialize. They continue to do whatever they need to do with their grandchildren. I don't know. They're continuing to live.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you that is it's a massive dilemma. I was talking to a guy 2 weeks, what's today? So 1.5 weeks ago, I was talking to a guy, and he says He will not visit his parents. He's in his mid-40s. I'm not visiting my parents. I won't. I'll walk past and I'll wave from the fence. I will not go in. My kids, they know we're not doing it. Like, we want to get the hell out of this situation. But he said, but my brother goes in the house. The kids play soccer in the back. Has a very different attitude. And the guy I was talking to, like, he's broken. Like, it's killing him to be in this
Yeah.
situation. And do you say, well, you know what? You're in Glen Eira. The numbers are extremely low. Do you take a risk in the name of just getting a bit of internal balance, or do you say no? You got to rough it, and it's a very, very hard ethical call. And then you see people like, I'll tell you, I had it in with the DHHS myself, because every coffee shop around Spirit Grow is open. Everyone can line up and get their coffee. But when all the restrictions came out, I was told I'm not allowed to go into Spirit Grow to make any pastoral care calls. In fact, if I know someone needs to talk to me, either I call them from my house. I said, but I've got kids jumping all over the place. I need to talk to people in private. Like, I need a bit of silence. They said, well, if it's so important, go to their house. So I said, you'd rather me go to their house than go to my office? They said, well, if it's so important, go to the house. But you're not allowed to make phone calls from your office. Anyway, we sorted that out. But like, I remember for a couple of weeks, for the first 2 weeks of this lockdown, I was looking at the people at the coffee shop going, what the heck? You can schmooze and kibitz outside a coffee shop, but I can't call people who have got depression? Like, this is nuts. And there was such judgment, such frustration. Newton, sorry, Janine.
No, go. Keep going.
Newton, you wanted to say something?
I was going to also respond to Helen's point about what sort of an experience different people are having. I'm having, and I'm almost, I don't know, it's going to feel weird to admit this, but I'm having probably the most extraordinary time of my life.
That's hilarious.
Now, it's very important, Newton, you've got to disclose what your place of work is.
I work in the city of Bayside. I work for council. So I'm for the first time in my illustrious 40-year career almost in property, working from home in the most idyllic of settings. I have my wife, my 2 dogs. I have a fridge that is overburdened with food. I go for a walk in the sunshine. I walk the dogs during the day. I come to bed whenever I want to come to bed at nighttime. I don't have to go out. I can stay in. I have the most amazing online life. I meditate. Thank you to Menachem. I lead a meditation at council at 8:30 in the morning every morning, and I've done 120 meditations so far in lockdown.
You have to tell me which ones. I want to join.
If you're on Teams, you'll be very welcome, because that's people will want to meditate, not always for the wrong reasons as well.
Yeah.
There's an awful lot of positivity that has come through from my experience that couldn't possibly compare to yours, but it is. I mean, I'm English. My son is about to have his first child in Britain, and I'm going to miss it.
Yeah, of course.
That, on the one hand, is devastating, but on the other hand, it's amazing that he's going to have a child. So I can take an awful lot of the spiritual elements that, honestly, Spirit Grow has given me, and use them to the nth degree in these circumstances. This conversation it would never have happened had it not been for COVID. So yeah.
So Helen, what do you? That's such a different world.
It's fantastic to hear, and I can tell you this much: I actually don't mind being stuck at home either. To be honest with you, because I work so many hours normally. In normal times, we work ridiculously long hours, ridiculously long. You wouldn't believe. I mean, really long hours, 7 days a week, operating, etc., etc. So for me, this is great. But I do get to go to work. So I do get to go outside and sort of talk to other people. But I do know quite a few people who are actually quite happy to stay at home.
Yeah.
I mean, some people are actually loving it, from putting aside the danger of the COVID, putting aside just from being at home, doing your thing exactly as he mentioned. And some people are really loving it. Even some of my work people go happy to go home and veg out on the weekend. No work, they just veg out. It's nice for people who have really been really, really, really busy. So that's positive. It is pleasant. It is. But there are people who, sorry, Menachem, who are looking, who are really doing the right thing. My friend Bev, I mean, click and save, click and collect. Who does that for all the weeks? I mean, yeah, you do, Bev. I know, it's amazing. Click and collect. Like a person doesn't walk into the supermarket. That's somebody dedicated to looking after themselves. It's amazing,
Helen, one of the things that I like about you is a certain level of irreverence. I know that you laugh at dark jokes. So what's some of the humor? Is there humor being used in the staff room? Oh, really?
Yeah.
No,
there is. Humor. There is, but it's humor that I can't tell. I can't discuss so open. It's because it's become very free for all, actually.
So there is a lot of that as an outlet.
A lot. Free for all. And it's not always very choice, but people need it, and that's why they've gone to that level of crassness, really. It's a level of crassness.
I have a good friend, a guy I married off a number of years ago. His wife is semi-Sephardi, and he makes jokes that push certain boundaries, and she'll say that's not funny, and he says, well, it might just be because you're not of the Jewish faith. You're not of the Ashkenazi Jewish faith. And she takes it very personally. He says, because if you can't laugh with the dark humor, then what have you got as your release?
Yeah.
And I remember when I was learning to become a rabbi in South Africa, so we had the head of Chevra Kadisha came and gave us a few classes. And he just off the cuff, some of the comments he made, like he cracked himself up and we couldn't believe the things he'd said. They were just like really morbid, dark humor. I mean, they were funny, but none of us had the guts to laugh. And someone eventually said, like, why do you make those jokes? And he said, I didn't even think about it, but I can only think that after years of working with death, families who are grieving, and that is what you deal with, after a while you got to be able to laugh at it, because that's just one of the releases of the mind. So I'm not justifying it, it's just that's what is. So humor plays an important role in processing these sorts.
Well, that's exactly right. And that's why that, some of our jokes and some of the things that are said, and sometimes we do little dances and silly things that we don't normally do because it's just an outlet. And it's actually what it has done is bonded us together. The staff are really, we've really bonded a lot.
Yeah.
You just have to pull together. So we do have some laughing moments, let me tell you, some really funny moments, which is nice. It's really nice. Yeah.
Before we wrap up, does anyone have any questions for Helen on some of the things she's spoken about, even things that we haven't spoken about, just in context of her work? It's been a fascinating glimpse, by the way, Helen. It's like,
thanks, Menachem.
As in, it's not a current affair
really
story. It's like a glimpse into a moment of a person's life.
Yeah. All I can say is, as I said before, I can't imagine what's going on in the Alfred or Royal Melbourne in the intensive care units. It's like 25,000 times more hectic and dangerous than what we're experiencing. And it's I just wish everybody to take heed of what's going on, really.
David, you want to ask something?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. One was about the PPE gear. Are they looking into ways of making it more comfortable, or perhaps they could have built-in, I don't know, catheters or whatever, for the stuff, something to.
The Formula One drivers have it. Why shouldn't the nurses have it?
Or an air conditioning device that can go into the suits, or I don't know.
I don't think so. I don't think that'll ever happen. No, I don't think so. It's just a matter of, you can go to the toilet, but it's such a mission to take off and put on again that people just elect not to, But no, I doubt that. I doubt, it's the same. With all due respect, when we do operations that last 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 hours, same story. You know, you
Yeah.
just gotta hold it in, man. You gotta clutch it in. That's it.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there's no easy way.
And I was also, I'm a musician actually, and I've been
Okay.
playing at Jewish Care for 20 odd years,
Mm,
you know, a few times a week. And now they can't have any of that.
terrible.
That, you know, that it's such a big thing for them to have music.
Mm,
Tried a few Zoom concerts, which work all right,
Mm.
but it's not the same as
no, because they don't know
being there,
really
yeah.
what to do. Yeah, no, it's terribly, it's very, very sad. But you know, I suppose, you know, some of those people, you know, what
Yeah.
can I say? They don't remember from, you know, hour to hour. So sometimes
Yeah.
it's a blessing that they don't actually know what's really going on.
Yeah.
But
true.
I wanted to ask you, Helen, and then I'm going to hand over to Janine, who I think has a question. Why were you guys selected to go to the Jewish Care outbreak, and why haven't you also had to go to other old age homes? Like how was
we
that?
are in other old age homes as we speak. We are in other old age homes.
Okay.
But Jewish Care was just a proximity thing. So
Okay,
where my hospital is, Jewish Care is like 5 minutes away.
And was that a government allocation? Does government
Yeah,
say, right, you're
government. I tell you what they do, the government. I tell you exactly what they do. At 5 o'clock, we get the call.
5
I need
a.m. or
20
5
staff.
p.m.?
5 p.m. We get a call. I need 20 staff to go to Jewish Care. And then our managers come and go, who's volunteering? And everybody keeps stum. Who wants to work in COVID ward? And then one person will go, okay, I'll go. And then all of a sudden, you can't make anybody go and work in a COVID ward. You can't force anybody to do it. You cannot.
Right.
But people just innately have that goods cart where they do it. They do
I
it.
suppose you go into this craft, you're condemned to this, unfortunately.
Yeah, yeah. It's just what we do. So, no, it just was a proximity thing that we went. But we're now at a place in Malvern, Malvern and High Street. I forget the name of it. Another facility, which we've sent a whole team. A lot of people are there because they are in such distress at the moment. So it's a travesty what's happening to our old people. It's an absolute travesty.
Right.
And I can tell you, just to get political, and we do discuss this all the time, it is a shunda on the government how they've allowed aged care to go undetected for so many years of being, you know, so badly looked after. It's just appalling. This is not just a COVID crisis. This is an aged care crisis.
This is COVID has just exposed it, you're saying?
Yeah, absolutely. This is from, you know, who knows, 30, 40, 50 years ago. It's appalling. It's all about this in aged care.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot.
But that's what it's about. It's appalling. Absolutely appalling.
Janine, you had a question?
It was actually not about that, but it was actually something that David said about, can you not put have some oxygen or whatever into your suit?
A catheter, Janine.
And you said something about also for breathing. Did you say that, David?
David had suggested a little air conditioning system.
Well, I suppose anything, or breathing, yeah.
Yeah, I go to a prosthodontist, and I think I told Helen the other day, I'm going to him now, and he puts on like a little space suit over his head, and he's got his oxygen, and he does whatever he does, and he's breathing, and yeah.
I tell you why, Janine. I tell you why. Dentistry and ENT, ear, nose, and throat surgery or working in the mouth is the most dangerous form of surgery to be involved in with the COVID. And so he has to protect himself like 1,000,000%. Yeah. Because, you know, if you're looking and you're so close to a patient, you just need one droplet. You just need one drop or one spray of a cough. Then you're done. It's over.
And I was talking to a dentist in our community who said with dentistry, you're dealing with mist. Like there's all the spray and stuff. And yet it has been surprisingly low the number of dentists that have been impacted by
Yeah,
COVID.
because they're completely PPE'd. They are vigilant with the way they put on their PPE. And if you do it properly, you will be, hopefully spared.
Mm.
You see, in the early months, people weren't doing PPE properly because who knew? We didn't know. Nobody knew. Nobody knew how to deal with this thing. Daniel Andrews didn't know how to deal with it. How the hell would we know how to deal with it?
Well, that's very interesting because Rochel just sent me an article last night. There's a hospital at the edge of Bnei Brak in Israel, one of the larger hospitals of that area, not as big as Tel
Barak
Shemesh
Wabash.
or anything like that. But there hasn't been a single case of doctor or nurse contracting it. And because as a hospital in the beginning, every hospital could roll out its own what level of seriousness they were taking. It wasn't government, and they just rolled out their biological training approach. They just said, because everyone, apparently all hospitals in Israel, they go through every year through, they'll have a chemical warfare drill, and then the next year they'll have a biological warfare drill, and there's a high level of knowledge amongst all nursing and hospital nursing and medical staff. And they just said, right, biological warfare 101, that's what we're going to be doing. And it was actually condemned at the beginning. It was like ridiculous how intense they were. But now, five months on, they haven't had a single case of staff being infected because they've just maintained that extreme level of vigilance that you described as the reality now.
Yeah. I mean, the truth is, if you do your PPE 100%, you'll be okay. You'll be okay. And, but the other reality is we've got about, I think, 1,200 medical staff at the moment who've been infected, which is a hell of a lot of people that's been infected. It is. I don't know if everybody saw on television the other night the Ambo guy, the ambulance driver. Young, fit, healthy guy, transporting the aged from one facility to another. He had PPE, but obviously it wasn't sufficient, and he got it, and he's been quite sick. A young guy in his 20s from Melbourne. And it's just heartbreaking, it just breaks your heart. Because don't forget, it's not just the virus that's in your body for 2 to 3 weeks. It's what's going to happen after. Nobody really knows. So, that's the fear. Yes.
Helen, I'm gonna wrap it up, and I'm gonna wrap it up by firstly giving such a big thanks to you for you talk about it all day to now give up a night to talk about it. It's like
I'm gonna watch A Farmer Wants a Wife now.
Well, I thought I could spare you at least that. But as I said, while a lot of this conversation, these sorts of conversations could be quite nerve-wracking, for me, in a way, this was not so much nerve-wracking as much as interesting, because we didn't get into the numbers and everything, but it's definitely a crazy life that you're living. And that humility of like, well, it's not as crazy as the people at the Royal Melbourne or wherever.
Alfred,
but it is a crazy reality, and I'll make sure we keep churning out those meditations. But so good of you to share and just to be able to do that, which is your gift. That's yours.
Oh, thanks, Menachem.
And I appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
No, it's been, thank you so much. I just want everybody to stay safe and just heed the warnings. Just wear a mask, keep away, click and collect. Bev.
And my last question, actually not just my last question, my last comment is, many people don't realize that it's not like Helen doesn't have a life at home. It's not like that you don't come home to your fair share of challenges and everything. Helen's been living with the impact of an exploded pipe in her house. Water pipe. So can you imagine you come home from this and then you got to deal with insurers and all that rubbish.
And no kitchen and no ovens. There you go.
Oh my God. Some people are taking the tranquilizer. You're taking the hospital meals.
No, Menachem, they're not worth it.
Not worth it. All right. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Lovely
Good
to
night.
see you all. Take care, everybody. Janine, I'll speak to you. Bye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Bye,
all for
Manaf.
joining.
Thanks.
See ya.
Bye.
Bye.